Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LSP Method Podcast, episode 2. I am Michael Fern, your host. And today we're going solo again for our second episode. So, we're going to talk about an interesting question that always pops up for new people that learn about Lego Serious Play. It's who should I train with? Where should I get my certification? How should I learn Lego Serious Play? So, we're going to go through a few things to think about. I'm also going to dive into the 5 main training organizations that train people in Lego Serious Play and that certify people in LSP. But I want you to, a few disclaimers at the start, take all this with a big grain of salt. So, out of those 5 main trainers, I am one of them, or the organization I run is one of them. So, I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible. With that, we're going to go through each of the organizations, maybe some of the pros and cons, and look at, the features that I think are great and ones that I think could be improved, but realize that 4 of those other training organizations you could probably think of as my competitors. So I'll try and be unbiased, but you sort of know where my allegiances lie with myself and the organization that I run. But we'll do that. But I also want to not just look at the organizations, but look at the sort of process of how do you go from sort of first learning about Lego Serious Play to maybe potentially training it. There's a few steps in between that we can talk about. Now, the information that I'm going to provide around the unfiltered information that I'm going to provide around some of these organizations has been sort of gathered together from publicly available information. We'll look at their websites. It's also, I've chatted with a lot of the people that run these organizations, so I sort of know their philosophy. And it's more so from talking with people who've attended their training. Now, I haven't attended other people's trainings, but I've got a good sense or a sense for that. And I'm always happy for other people in the comments to jump in with their views as well. Now, obviously, wherever, people might be watching this have already trained in Lego Serious Play, everyone's going to say their one was awesome. And I think it's a good point to start is I think with learning Lego Serious Play, if you do want to go to the extent of training and getting certified in it, you really can't go wrong. Like all the organizations that train do a good job, and they do a fairly similar job in terms of learn Lego Serious Play, you go out and use it. There are differences. There's difference in philosophy. There's difference in style. There's difference in emphasis. But I don't think you can really go wrong with any of them, to be honest. So let's just think about before we dive into those organizations, let's look at where you might start from the very, very, very start. So the very first thing is experience Lego Serious Play. That's the key is get along to some sort of meetup. If there's something online, just experience what it is. And where a lot of people come in is they maybe do it at work or they experience it and then they want to learn more. So definitely experience it is the first thing. The second point I would go to is there is quite a few books that have been put out. There's a really good one. I think I've got it here. A really good one that I wrote called the LSP Method. So that's available from Amazon, or actually it's available on my website, which I'll show you for free. There's other ones by a guy called Sean Blair, which we'll talk about. And so there's a few other books. So that's where I would go next. So I would experience it. I'd maybe grab some of these books, have a flick through. Again, they're different styles, but some of them give you, like my one, give you a good how-to on how to actually do that. So do that. And then if you want to go to the extent of getting certified, getting trained in it, then that's what we're going to talk about now. Now, we always do recommend that. So you don't have to become certified in Lego Serious Play. Like if you're just using it in some low risk situations, like with your friends or family and want to test it out, then it's perfectly fine to just, grab a book, grab some bricks and give it a shot and see if there's something there. But we always say if you do want to do it in sort of, in more a professional capacity, whether it's at schools or whether it's in corporate or education or lots of other use cases, then we always do recommend, going and getting trained certified in it. And it does a few things. It gives you a depth of knowledge and a great learning experience. So you get to know the method really well, which, you can't always get just from reading a book. You get to experience it, you get to see other people, you get to connect with, expert in it who sort of supports and motivates you and provides all those other things as well. So there's that, there's the credentialing. So, it's a signal to, potential clients and other people that, hey, look, you got certified in it. So you're serious about it. You've got the backing of a person and an organization. So I think it's very much worth, getting that certification, getting that depth of training in it. Now, how you go about that training, that's what we're going to talk about now. So I'm going to flick on to the websites of these 5 different organizations and go through them and talk about some of the differences in them. As we go through, think about these things. Think about the length of time that the training courses are. So there are 4-day courses, 3-day courses, 2-day courses. I've even experimented with a 1-day course that I'll talk about. But mostly there's a 4, a 3, or a 2-day. So we'll talk about the differences there. The other thing to think about is the cost. So they vary from maybe like 1,500 US all the way up to 4,000, 5,000 US. So they can get quite expensive, and there's a range in between. But really, the big difference is, I think, the philosophy of the people running them. So some are very closed, where they just teach the method a particular way and not particularly open to doing it other ways. And there's some that are very open, that are, here's a foundation, let's help you build it, let's help you adapt it. So there's a different philosophy in some of these, and I'll talk about that as we go through. So let me just share my screen. So the first one we're going to talk about is, we're actually going to go through, interestingly, probably from the ones who started training first. So if you don't know the background of the LSP method, it was open sourced in 2010. So it was sort of developed from around 2000 to 2010, open sourced in 2010, and the community really run a lot of the training. So Lego don't provide any training, they don't endorse any one of us. They really just, it's a community run thing now. Even though the method really, its origins were from the Lego group, that the community now sort of run it and innovate and train people in it. So we're going to go from that. We're going to go ones that are longer in length, say 4 days all the way to 2 days. And we're also going to go ones that are perhaps more closed to more open. So it's interesting how it flows like that. So the first one is the Association of Master Trainers. So this is run by, or started by 2 people, the Robert Rasmussen and Per Christensen. Now, they were involved in the development of the method at the Lego group in the 2000 to 2010 range. And when it open sourced, they went out and started training other people. So they have a bunch of people. There's, who are we up to? Like, there's the trainers. They've got like maybe a list of 15 people that are working with them, and they train all around the world, particularly in Europe. There's South America, North America. So they've got their training schedule here. So they're, how would I say that? They do a 4-day course. It's, how would I describe it? Very, very thorough. They take you through a lot of the traditional way that it was developed, and the strategy use case, the sort of big workshops. I would describe it as, the way they teach it is complex. So, there's 4 days. It's very long days. So some of the days are quite long. It's very thorough, but I find, from my experience with training people, a lot of people come out and they're a little bit overwhelmed by the sort of amount of content or the method, and there's a lot in there, and they make it very complex. And that's another way that perhaps differentiates some of these, is some of them make the method very complex, and that means you don't perhaps use it as much coming out of some of these trainings, to other people who are trying to make it, keep the power but make it simpler and easier to use. So Association of Master Trainers, like, their costs, they don't have it on the website, but I know that it can get up to, 3,000, 4,000 US and upwards. So the thing I would do, if you're interested in the Association of Master Trainers, is sort of quiz them about why they do 4 days, and they're a little more closed. So, for instance, they have a conference that they do each year. The only people who from the Association of Master Trainers are allowed. And so they have this philosophy which sort of shines through in their sort of community culture and also their marketing, which is, we do Lego Serious Play the correct way, and other people that are outside perhaps don't do it as correct. And so there's a particular culture around that, which doesn't sort of mesh with me, but some people really love that, and they love that sort of 4-day sort of thorough, complex training. So that's the Association of Master Trainers. Now, another one that I want to take you through is an organization called Strategic Play, and they are based in North America, particularly Canada, with a lady called Jackie Lloyd Smith. And so she was training again in the 2000 to 2010 range. So she's been training a while. I'm just going to go to some of their training. They run a 3-day course, although online it's 4 days as well. If I scroll down, we'll see they break down their courses into not just the Lego Series Play method, but for particular uses. Like they've got teams and groups here. Down here, they've got strategy as a sort of extra day and meetings and classrooms. So they sort of break it down into a few different ones. Whereas the Association of Master Trainers is very much here's the method, go off and use it. This is like breaking it down into in sort of smaller use cases. So they're doing a bit online and a couple in America, but it doesn't look like they've got a huge amount of workshops at the moment. Um, I would say look, they do a good course, from what I've heard. They perhaps focus more on sort of HR trainery type use cases that would, not exclusively, obviously they do things like strategy, but they very much focus on, I think, that group and use cases in there, and how to use it for those sorts of use cases. But all accounts, Jackie and Strategic Play run a great organization. I did my certification with a lady called Denise Meyerson, who's here in Australia, and she partners or she's like works with Jackie and Strategic Play. Part of the reason why I started certifying people and training people is because I didn't get what I wanted from my certification. I wanted it done better, so that's why I do it better. So I sort of know a little bit about this one, but it's not quite what Strategic Play do. It's sort of similarly aligned. But yeah, I just think it's very HR trainer type focus, and I think in terms of the depth of knowledge of the method and the expansiveness of it, that's something where, again, I would ask questions around Strategic Play and Jackie and really dive into that. So they do a 3-day course. I think Canadian, they do it in Canadian dollars, but converting it to US, I think they're around the sort of 2,500 US range, maybe up to three, sort of 2,500, 2,800. But yeah, that could change. So dive into that. Now, the third organization is called Interface, so Int HR Face. And this is by a gentleman called Michael Buckle, and he is based in Denmark. And so they run a 4-day certification. They actually do it at the Legoland hotels. Now they do it obviously in Billund in Denmark, but they do it in the UK. There's a Legoland there. They do it in the US as well. And so again, 4 days, very thorough. They are partnering with a gentleman called Johan Roos, who was one of the inventors of Lego Serious Play. So Michael is very open. He runs a conference that anyone can go to. It's quite popular. His approach to the methodology, I think, is it's very not rigid. It's very again detailed. It's very thorough. It's very how to describe it? It's very set. And there is a couple of certifications. If I go onto his certifications, there's a little online micro one, but there's the complete certification, and he does a thing called real-time change, which is another sort of application of Lego Series Play. I know there's a higher education one he does as well. So there are a couple that are sort of add-on advanced ones, but it seems like the 4-day one is that sort of that main one that he does. Cost-wise, I think it starts getting up to sort of 3,500 to 4,000 US, but that includes things like accommodation at Legoland. So there's a few other things thrown in there as well. But again, it's a bit pricey, 4 days. But again, Michael's great training. The fourth person I'll go to is Sean Blair in the UK, and he runs a company called Serious Work. So he focuses mostly on a 2-day course, and that 2-day course gets you what he calls builds level 1 and 2, which is up to a certain point. And then there is a third day that you can sort of go to, which gives you sort of the full method. So it's almost like a 2+1. Which is an interesting way to break it up. Cost-wise, his converts to around 2,500 US dollars for that sort of 2-day course. Sean's great. He's a little more open with Lego Serious Play. Like I really like his style. Like if you weren't going to train with me and my organization, which I'll talk about next, I'd probably recommend Sean as the place to go to. So he's very open. He's a real facilitator. Like he knows he has a high bar for quality in terms of wanting people to do the method correctly. He trains mostly in the UK, but he has people that he works with in Europe, so in Germany. He does a bit of work in Asia and Dubai, and a little bit over in America as well. So check out Sean. He's written a few books, which are always good to add into the reading mix. And yeah, I guess that one of the only I like his format of 2 days. I think you don't need 4 days. I would say that maybe a con with Sean, or one of the downsides, is I still think he could expand his view of Lego Serious Play and use it in a lot more cases, but he's definitely more open than others. Um, he does set the bar very high. Like it's quite good. He demands a lot in terms of quality, and he wants people to go out and deliver Lego Series Play really, really well, so that no one does it wrong to mess it up for everyone else. So I really appreciate that approach. There is a bit of a downside to that, where, as I mentioned to Sean, that really high bar for quality, that can be a deterrent for some people. It's not so much getting into the workshop, but after the workshop, thinking that you have to deliver it at this higher level, I think can be a bit of a motivation stopper for some people. But by all accounts, Sean, and I've chatted with him many times, he runs a fantastic couple of day workshop certification. So Sean is awesome. Now let's move on to what I think is the best, obviously, is the one I run. So I run a thing called the LSP Method Network. And so I run my personal certifications here in Australia and around the world, but I also work with a group of partners. And so it's a little bit different to how the other organizations work, where they have, more people sort of working directly with them. So I have about 17 people at the moment, and I do want more. And I teach them how to run my certification. And so what we do is, there's my certification, which I've been running since 2013-ish. And what we do is they come along, they're experienced Lego Series Play facilitators. Some of them trained by me initially, some of them trained by, Sean and Association of Master Trainers. So they've got that experience. They go out, they use the method, they do it for a few years, know the method inside and out. And then they come to me and we partner up, and I teach them all I know about certifying people, give them materials, they combine it with and put their own spin on it. And then they go off and run their certification. Now, I run a 2 day. Most of the partners run a 2 day, and we'll talk about that in a second. Some of them run a 3. There's a couple that run a 3 day. They're open to run, whatever they want. But um, the way I do it is for me, and my style is, maybe what I'll do is I'll stop sharing. My style of Lego Series Play is really about making it very practical, very accessible. And so this is why I choose to do a 2 day certification. So you can learn all that you need to for Lego Series Play in 2 days, as opposed to four. I think a 4 day course is very restrictive in terms of, it's the whole week. Whereas, most people can get a couple of days either from their business if they're self-employed, or from if they are employed in a company. You can usually get 2 days off to do that. So it's much more accessible than a 4 day. We bring it down to just what you need to know, like the essentials of, learning about it. And the way you learn it is you experience it, then we unpack it as a facilitator, and on the second day you get to practice a little bit of that as well. So you go through and you learn things both from the participant point of view and from the facilitator point of view. Now, I used to do a 3 day course. I've even done a 1 day course. And I know about the 4 day courses. Throughout all those numbers, I feel like 2 days is the sweet spot. And it gives you just what you need versus, too long, too expensive with 4 days. The 3 day one, the longer you do it, you do get more time to practice. And that's often what the 3 day is. It's an extra day of practice. And that can be beneficial, definitely. But the way I arrange it is I get people to practice out in the real world. So they go to their family, they go to their friends, they go to their trusted colleagues, and they get the support from me and my partners to deliver and practice that workshop in safe environments in the real world. Now, I think that saves a day and a lot of money, and I think it's actually a better way to do it. Um, I have done a 1 day course, but it's just too short. And I do a blended course. I have occasionally, but 2 days is definitely that sweet spot. And so we have partners around the world. Some of them do, slightly different spins on it. So we've got a lady called Lucy Hawthorne who is in the UK, and she runs Lego Series Play and sort of climate change sustainability. And that's her focus of certification. We've got Paul Sandbar in the US, in LA, and he runs mostly online, but also Lego Series Play and coaching. He's got a wonderful coaching framework that he uses as well. So we've got people that specialize like that. Then we've got people who do, like me, general Lego Series Play, like Michael Barsakides in Germany, David Whitty in the Netherlands. We've got Patrick McNeil in the US. We've got David Newman, who's splitting his time between Canada and the US. We've got Miriam and Bryony in Ireland, and all these people they go everywhere and they do certification. So My approach, I think it's the future of certifications, is to empower the great people to go off and run their certifications with, the backing and the standards that I provide. And I think that's just the best way to do it. Now, interestingly, price wise, I can talk about what I do. The partners are free to charge whatever they want, but I charge around 1800 to 2000 US. So I actually come in, of all the five we've talked about, I actually come in at the lower price point and also the sort of lowest number of days. So you could do 4 days, $4,000, or 3 days, and it starts getting up to $3,000 US. But I've chosen the 2 day and around 2000 US. And it's this counterintuitive thing that more days and more money doesn't necessarily mean better. It often means more complex, and more information and more overwhelm and probably some unnecessary stuff. And so that's why I've found that bringing it down to 2 days, a great price point, you save a bit of money, you can spend it on the Lego. And so for me, that's where I think I run quite a good certification. But the best thing to do from here is, like I said, experience it, look at the books, and then ask questions of all these five training organizations. So contact them and ask them questions, feel the vibe, talk about your use case, see if you connect with those particular trainers. And that's where you can make an informed choice about who you want to work with. Like I respect anyone who goes off and does that research and just finds the group that they want to get trained with and then does Lego Serious Play. And once you've done Lego Serious Play, it doesn't matter who you train with. It then is about getting out, using it, evolving your skills and approach, learning, improving, and all those sorts of things. So anyway, I hope you've found this useful, answering the question of, hey, you want to learn Lego Serious Play, where do you go? I've talked about the process. I've talked about those organizations, everything from Association of Master Trainers with their, 4 day sort of $4,000 course that can be, thorough but a bit complex. Strategic Play, their 3 day course and around sort of two and a half, $3,000. Maybe a little more focused on HR training type stuff, but still a great course. Interface, do a 4 day course. Bit of an experience at Legoland. Again, quite pricey, but there's a lot of great stuff that Michael does. Sean Blair, who does 2 days, but you can add in a sort of advanced third day, and he charges around the sort of 2 to 2,500 range. And Sean's great. Love his approach. If you weren't going to go with me or my partners, I would definitely recommend Sean as the first cab off the rank. And then there's me and my LSP Method Network. So you can train with me. You can train with anyone around the world in this network, and you get the experience, their experience, my experience, the support, the learning platform, a whole bunch of other stuff. And we come in, usually at a 2 day course around $2,000 as well. All right, that's it. I'm going to let you go and contemplate these things. We're going to go for episode 3 to some guests. So I've been doing some interviews with LSP people, learning about them, how they use LSP, some of their insights. So keep an eye out for episode 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to get those out soon. And if you do want to be on the podcast, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat LSP with people. But I hope you found this useful, and I will catch you next time on the LSP Method podcast.